Welcome to the Friendly Podcast Guide, sorting through podcasts so you don't have to. I'm Andy Smiley, and I want to help you discover the right podcast without having to listen to an entire episode. Now, let's talk podcasts. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This week, I get to talk about the other podcast that Zibby Owens hosts called SexTok, TOK, with Zibby and Tracey. She's also the host of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books, the podcast I talked about a couple of weeks ago. If you haven't listened to that one, you should definitely go back and listen to that one too. Zibby's story is so fun. I don't remember which episode exactly it is, but I'll put it in the show notes. Before we get to my chat with Zibby, here are some details about the show. The show description is, this weekly show pairs two mismatched women discussing relationship and sex topics we all typically whisper about. Laugh out loud funny, irreverent, British international sex expert and author of 17 books, Tracey Cox, answers questions from the audience posed by the squeamish Mama 4, award-winning literary podcaster Zibby Owens, who blushes often. The length of each episode is 20 to 30 minutes long, and they don't use explicit language, but they do talk about sex, so you can determine if it's kid ear friendly for your family. The series is ongoing with new episodes available on Mondays. Before we learn more about the vibe of the show, we're going to take a quick break to talk about Olive and June nail polish. I love having nail polish on, but I don't handle it well when my nail polish starts to chip a day or two after I paint my nails. That is where Olive and June comes in. I use their Mani system and my nail polish will stay on for a week with no chipping. It brings me so much joy every time I look at my nails with these fun colors, and I want you to have that joy too. You can get 20% off a Mani or Pedi system by using the affiliate link in the show notes. Now we get to hear from Zibby as she talks about her fabulous co-host and how they became a podcast duo. We get to talk to Zibby Owens again because she has two podcasts, and I am so excited to dive into Sex Talk with Zibby and Tracey. Introduce yourself again to my listeners.
I am Zibby Owens, and I am the host of the podcast Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books, and also Sex Talk, TOK, with Sex Talk with Zibby and Tracey, which I co-host with Tracey Cox, who is a sex therapist.
Fabulous. So you've got to tell me, how did you start Sex Talk? I just got to know.
Okay, so I started my whole brand, which has become Moms Don't Have Time To, with Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. And then I started expanding. And then I had a show called Moms Don't Have Time to Lose Weight when I started gaining lots of weight. And then I had Moms Don't Have Time to Get Sick, Moms Don't Have Time to Travel. I was going to do all these retreats and all this stuff. And I did a couple anthologies, and they were called Moms Don't Have Time To and Moms Don't Have Time to Have Kids. And they were each divided into 5 categories. One of the categories in one of the anthologies was Moms Don't Have Time to Have Sex. And one vision I had was that I would do a podcast on each of those verticals. So when I interviewed Tracey about her book, Great Sex Starts at 50, I was like, you need to do my show, Moms Don't Have Time to Have Sex. Like, you should just host that show, and that'll be the Moms Don't Have Time to Have Sex show. And She was like, she's British. And she's like, well, I wouldn't want to do it without you. So I was like, me? I was like, why would I do that show? I can't even like say any of the words out loud without being uncomfortable and blushing or whatever. I'm like the last person to do this. And she was like, no, that'll be great. So I came up with this idea of the structure of the show, which would be 3 anonymously sourced questions from the audience. And I would just read them and she would answer them. And then there'd be one sex tip or sex challenge or something at the end with like a tiny bit of banter at the beginning. And I mean, when I say I can barely get through some of these episodes, I'm regularly saying to her, why am I doing this show? But it's so fun, and I adore her. Like, we have so much fun. I've never even met her in person. We've done 55 episodes, and we're taking a break for the summer. But I mean, 55 half an hour chunks. That's a lot of time with somebody. I think it might be more time than I spent with my husband this year. So, yeah, that's where it came from. It was originally called Moms Don't Have Time to Have Sex, but then we went a little viral on TikTok. We had an account called @with_Zibby and Tracey, and there were these little clips which were beyond mortifying, where like a picture of me as I am now at my desk at my microphone, but over my head the text was like, why can't I have an orgasm? And I was like, literally my social media manager put it on TikTok. She's like, Zibby, there are like 1 million views. And I look at it and it's like, why can't I have an orgasm? I was like, are you kidding me? Like, you can't put this on. That's me. Like, anyway, it was so embarrassing. It got to the point where like, I would hang out with my son and his friend would be like, you showed up on my For You page on TikTok today. And I was like, what? So anyway, so we changed the name away from Moms to SexTok TOK. SexTok with Zibby and Tracey for that reason, and also to increase the appeal to the men and non-moms who wanted to listen.
Sure. Well, that is quite the origin story. I love it.
Yeah,
Truly.
sorry,
I did listen to one of those episodes and her voice is wonderful to listen to.
Yes.
And I do love that you read the questions because you do giggle a lot and that makes it feel more normal and like human.
Although one man just wrote in anonymously and was like, could you see if Zibby could be more professional by not giggling all the time? And I was like, that's my whole thing. It's that she's so comfortable and I'm not. Anyway, it's a funny dynamic we have, the two of us.
I love it. I feel like it's a normal dynamic. Not everyone can be super comfortable talking about sex. So can you tell me, what do you want people to get out of SexTok?
It's ended up being not just about sex, like the sex act, but also relationships. Like my husband has been spending too much time with a colleague at work. I'm a little nervous. Like, what should I do? Or we're about to be separated for 10 weeks. How should my husband and I keep up our intimacy? Or so I think they should take out of it that there are some new ideas they're going to hear. Tracey is always talking about all sorts of toys and things that, anyway, so you'll probably hear about some of that stuff. You'll learn about issues that other people are facing, which I find really interesting. Like, what are other people thinking about? Oh, this is a problem. And you'll probably feel a little less embarrassed about any issues you may think you alone are facing. Somebody's probably written in about it, and we have an answer for it. Or we at least have a debate about what to do about it. So I think it should help your connections with other people.
That's awesome. It sounds like in a very interesting and unique way, you're helping us remember the humanity of others.
Trying.
And what would you consider the vibe of the show?
It's actually won, it was an honoree for the Webby Award, which is the best of the internet out of 14,000 entries. It was an honoree for social humor. Like we've gotten awesome. All these humor nominations. So I would say the tone it's funny, but it's also informative. She's super prepared and she's got lots of studies and statistics and it's really based in science, fact, data. So it's a mix of entertainment and education.
I love that. And that, I feel like that's the best way to be educated, is also entertained, and you can laugh a little bit. I feel like everyone likes to laugh while they're being educated.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you have a favorite episode of this podcast, or a couple?
I don't know. We had a really long debate about cheating. That might have been one of my, when is it okay? Is it okay? I don't know. That was kind of thought provoking. So maybe that was one of my favorites, but that's not a great answer.
No, I think that's great. I can find that episode and link it in the show notes. Okay, so I feel like this is kind of obvious, but I am going to ask because I have a lot of mom listeners. Is your podcast okay for little ears?
I don't know about that. I might not put this on in the car when you're in the car with the kids. I think I would save this for headphones while you're doing the laundry or something.
Definitely. Yeah, that makes sense.
But it is for moms. And there's a lot about, there are a lot of questions about, I'm a new mom, or how long should I wait, or it hurts, or, I'm so tired and I just don't have the energy for sex anymore. And like, my husband wants to have sex all the time, or I want to have sex and my husband doesn't. So there's a lot of content for moms in the show. So definitely listen, but put some headphones on.
I love that. And that is the beauty of podcasts, is that you can just like stick a headphone in while your kids are watching a show, or while your kids are running around outside, or even like at one of their mini soccer games. You can just listen to a podcast while they run around in like little huddles. Is there anything else you want to add that we didn't touch on yet?
Tracey's site is traceycox.com, TRACEYCOX.com. She has written about 17 different books about sex. She's a sex expert. She has a lot of advice on her website, so you should check that out. We have a website ourselves. It's called sextokpod.com, SEXTOKPOD. And you will find a little more about us, but also where you can put in your anonymous questions. And we read every one, and we really do choose from the questions. So feel free to put in something you are too embarrassed to ask anyone on the planet, and we will talk about it and treat it with kindness and respect. And probably 16 other people have written in about it, so don't feel bad.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. I'm really glad that you have this podcast and that I get to introduce my listeners to it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you want to hear from me about more podcasts, please follow or subscribe on your podcast app of choice. And if you want to listen to more podcasts like SexTok and Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books, you can check out Zibby's podcast network, the Zcast Network. I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. Also, if you want nails that bring you joy and don't chip for a whole week, use the affiliate link in the show notes to get 20% off a mani or pedi system. Talk to you soon.